Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right. I tried. I was like, trying to hook up the camera, and I'm just getting too good at this. No, I'm not really, because like there's a whole network effect of like when you're a Ooh, my margarita will help. The network effect, of plugging in all the audio devices and camera devices. I thought I had two sources, and I don't think I did. I actually set the camera up over there, this one, and I was going to use the laptop cam, but I think it only just took from one. How are you doing out there, everybody?
I'm doing great.
I guess it goes silent when I'm not talking. So, the thing is, we had an earthquake here in North Carolina. What do you think of that? Did you feel it, Max?
No, I didn't feel it. I heard about it, and it's exciting. It's like another interesting development, seismologically speaking.
Well, I lived in Los Angeles, and I was there for the Northridge earthquake, and this was nothing compared to that. But I am hyper aware of earthquakes. So as soon as I felt the first few shakes, and I was like, because Fort Bragg is not that far away from here, and I thought maybe it was some helicopters coming. It was like boom, 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 like that. When we had earthquakes in Los Angeles, a lot of them came from San Andreas, so they were like, woo, woo. It wasn't like that. It was boom, 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 boom. So I thought it was a helicopter. And then I realized, whoa, this is an earthquake. Where am I? I had that moment of, where am I? I thought I was home, and we've been on lockdown for 6 months, but maybe, just maybe, like I got hit in the head and I don't know where I am.
Yeah, I didn't hear it. Yeah, I didn't feel it. It just came and went. If I wasn't told about it, I wouldn't have known that we had an earthquake. But they're always dramatic, aren't they? The ones in Los Angeles certainly are. The one in Vegas we experienced was very dramatic. We were up there in the 25 floors up in one of these towers, and the earthquake hit, and it was kind of scary, because you feel like the building's going to fall over.
Yeah, we were there for the big the big one that hit Vegas. It actually hit California. It was over on the border there. There've been quite a few since then, actually, but we were there. And the cool thing is of course I left Los Angeles in 1994, the second half of 1994, and the reason why I left was because of the stupid Northridge earthquake, which scared me so much. I was like, I'm leaving. I'm out of here. So I left, and lo and behold, 1994 to 2019, the next biggest earthquake since 1994 hits when Max and I are there, July 4th.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You seem to be an earthquake magnet. So that's something. Here we are, another one here that they haven't had one here since 1913 or something like that. So suddenly Stacy's here and there's an earthquake. So, go figure. There's something about it.
Well, somebody's saying it's Sparta, North Carolina. It was a 5.1. And I recognize that it was not quite, it felt like kind of a 3 to 3.5 over here. Just like the one that we experienced in Las Vegas was actually a 7, which is big. But that we kind of felt it like a 5. So that was in Vegas because we were so far away. So just think of that difference, the exponential difference in the Richter scale between where we are 150 miles from the epicenter of Sparta and how they must have felt at that location. We know because it was the same force in Vegas during that last earthquake. So how are you guys doing? Are you all happy with gold? You got gold?
Come Yay!
On. I'm looking for some gold holders.
Let's hear it for gold. Let's hear it for silver.
Oh, that's the finger to somebody who wants to talk about my eyeshadow. I am filming some, the titles for the new series called Orange Pill Podcast, and I'm doing a lot of orange stuff. I have lots of
nice.
orange fun things for the props for the opening titles.
Yeah, really
So,
nice.
you know, that's why I have orange. So you could stuff it. If you don't like it, just exit now. What's your name?
Yeah. Block them.
I gotta
Scorch them. Burn them at the stake. Burn them.
Pippi Bernstein.
Burn
Go.
it. Burn everything.
Get
Burn
out.
down their entire social media profile. Cancel them immediately.
Deplatform them.
You've been deplatformed. Go away, Pippi Longstocking, Bernstein, orange hater, an orange hater.
I'm writing to Rachel Maddow. I'm going to tweet her now and tell her that you should be deplatformed.
That's right. Tell the woke media that there's a deplatforming in progress out of necessity. There's a flock of Karens. They've descended into the orange haters, and they've combined forces to create a tsunami of anxiety on social media.
Yeah, so there's been a big, huge gold versus Bitcoin debate.
Again?
I see. Well, you know, it's been ongoing for the last, really for 10 years since Max and I have been covering Bitcoin. And before that, we were covering gold. So a lot of people, when we first started covering Bitcoin in 2011, they were, our audience were only gold bugs because, of course, there were no Bitcoin bugs back then. And then, so we started covering Bitcoin, and we got some very, very irate people angry with us because we were suddenly covering what they called a shit coin. Like, what is this? Not Bitcoin, it's shit coin. So it was very early that word was actually coined. No pun intended. So we, we've known it as a shit coin and people debating it.
Yeah, we were gold, gold bugs. And then we started covering Bitcoin, and we got so much flack from it. And I was thinking, now I know what it must have felt like for Bob Dylan when he went electric.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way it was. And you know what? So here we have gold really on a tear. And it's funny because there's always been this, the history of gold has informed a lot of people about what might happen with Bitcoin. So they're like, oh, when the futures contract for Bitcoin was introduced, that they're going to have manipulation in the Bitcoin space, just like they do with gold. Not really crediting the fact that the underlying collateral in the gold market is largely held by central banks and the women of India, who are really not allowed to sell their gold. Actually, it's supposed to be kept and, passed down from female to female. But, so now we have this gold market, and it's past 2000, soared through it, right? Just like on the way to the moon for gold. And what were we always saying for all these, 15 years? No, 17 years. 17 years ago, Max and I started a podcast from the south of France, and we were talking about gold back then, 2003. And by the way, gold back then was only $300. So you could have got it back then at $300. And the thing is that what gold was always acting as, and now what Bitcoin does too, is a sign of lack of faith, of distrust, and in the central banks and the monetary authorities, the people who were supposed to be regulating these shitcoin fiat, right? So now we have gold soaring through 2000, and Goldman Sachs says, Goldman Sachs is agreeing with us. They say this is a sign that the US dollar is toast. What do you say to that, Max?
Well, of course, that's exactly right. The US dollar is always been facing huge problems, and those problems now are becoming quite obvious to folks around the world. And the gold's already hit new all-time highs against every major currency except the US dollar. Then it recently made a new high against the dollar. It's got huge momentum behind it. And I guess the key to it all is to understand interest rates and how interest rates have gone negative. Real interest rates have already gone negative. So when people talk about negative rates on US Treasury bonds, will they go there? Well, in the US, you already have negative rates, and that would be the nominal rate minus the inflation rate. So we're already at more than negative 1%. And that means the value of holding gold is obvious to people who don't want to earn a negative 1% on their safe haven money. So they buy gold. And that negative real rate's going to negative 2%. And that's just going to keep that bid firm on the buy side of gold and see it trade a lot higher from here. Silver, of course, has a lot of catching up to do. That's going to be trading a lot higher. Of course, it'll go through 50. And it's also great for Bitcoin because Bitcoin is a store of value like gold, and people want to have a place, safe haven. So they're plowing into Bitcoin.
So, I don't really do technical analysis, but I do like looking at it, especially after the fact, to see that, oh, okay, yeah, that worked. I don't ever really invest in that. There are some moments where you can see something is overbought. But then like Tesla's been overbought technically, right? Since what? Like we're in 2020, so like 2017. So it's been overbought for a long time. So whether or not you would want to make your investment decisions based on that is another thing. But in terms of gold and silver, silver, somebody was describing the chart is that you have in 1980 it hit $50, and then down. And then in 2011, it hit $50 again and then fell. So what you're describing, this is David Morgan, and he said, now we're going to have the epic handle. So if his technical analysis is right, we should go well over 50. It should punch through on the third time. It's tried 50 twice, and now it should soar through on the third time if his technical analysis is right and there is a cup and handle.
Well, even on a fundamental analysis, it's going to punch through 50 and go a lot higher because of the vast quantities of fiat paper money that's quickly dropping in purchasing power because of the incredible rate at which the stuff is being printed up. So the G4 banks, I believe, are the top central banks printing paper money. And they haven't done so at this speed ever in history. And so money is escaping into safe havens, gold, silver, and Bitcoin. So considering the amount of gold, silver, and Bitcoin that's available versus the amount of paper money that's out there, you can see these prices in precious metals and Bitcoin going a lot higher. They would have gone up a lot higher sooner. But in the case of the US dollar, because it's the world reserve currency and it's backed by the world's most powerful empire ever, with the world's most funded military ever, it took a while, but now we're at that point where it rolls over and money floods into safe haven.
Well, what about Bitcoin this week? Have you noticed anything interesting, Max?
Well, there's always interesting things going on in Bitcoin this week. I guess the story in crypto and Bitcoin last week, the big story was that a flame war broke out. Pierre Rochard took on the Ethereum community in a huge way and started pointing out that no one's actually done any accounting of Ethereum, and the quantity of Ethereum is unknown. And the Ethereum community came back and said, well, actually, you're right. It is unknown and we don't care. So that the question became, doesn't matter if nobody knows how many Ethereum are out there. And so this was kind of like, I noticed I seemed to be the biggest kind of social media debate going on last week.
Yeah, so Ethereum, essentially, if you look at every block explorer, and there are lots of them out there, and if you go and you check out Bitcoin, they all agree exactly how many blocks have been mined and what block we are on at the moment. Now, if you check with Ethereum, you'll find a couple dozen, like a dozen different block amounts that have been produced, and nobody knows for sure how much it is. So Vitalik seems to think that's not a big issue. It's up to you. Do your own research. It seems a little bit bizarre to me. There's a couple thousand in discrepancy between the various blockchains. So those with smaller size blockchains, you would assume like they're missing some transactions on there, or somebody's missing transactions, or has phantom transactions, or something bizarre is going on. And I would be worried if I were holding it for any sort of long-term contract. One of these DAOs, or another DAO or two got hacked as well this week, by the way. So all these smart contracts are pretty smart at separating fools from their money.
Well, it comes back to a discussion of what is money. And when you're talking about money, you're talking about scarcity. And in the Ethereum community, they question whether scarcity is an important part of the definition of money. So that's like one of the interesting subplots of this debate. And so that's something I've noticed over the past 10 years about the Ethereum project, is that nobody in the Ethereum camp seems to, they call it money and they think it's suitable as a money substitute, but they never have ever um, kind of signaled that they thought that scarcity was an important part of money. So they don't believe that scarcity has anything to do with the definition of money. And then there's probably, I think that they're the only group who, in that conversation of what is money, who doesn't believe scarcity is a factor. I would think every other group, whether it's Keynesians or whether it's Austrians or whether whomever, that they do acknowledge to some degree a limited quantity as being an important element of the definition of money. Everyone does, it seems, except the Ethereum people.
Plus, it doesn't seem censorship resistant. They've already, basically forked in order to deny hackers the use of, like, remember the original DAO back a few years ago. They forked in order to destroy those coins. Then the fact that there are missing various blocks on some of the block explorers versus others suggests that's also censorship in a way. Somebody's going to find out that they don't have coins when they try to spend them. So yeah, it seems ridiculous, but everything is a fractal of some other fraud. And if you look at what's going on with the US government and the Treasury and the Fed and all these crazy things, like Trump is out there in the news, or certainly on Twitter, and he's issuing executive orders, and he's just bypassing Congress, using emergency executive orders to claim that he's going to send every American $400 extra a week for these enhanced unemployment benefits. But using trickery, of course, because what he really knows is that no state at this moment in time can afford to provide 25% of these enhanced unemployment benefits that he's proposed, that he's ordered through executive order. And so if the state can't come up with the $100, then the federal government doesn't have to provide the $300 out of the Social Security funds and other various Treasury. Like, the president is allowed to, obviously Congress is the one that has to budget. They provide the budget for any government expenses. So the president, however, is allowed to use some of these emergency funds during a declared emergency, which this pandemic is.
Right. Well, it's desperate, and it's more trashing of the dollar, which is why gold, Bitcoin, and silver are going higher, because the rate at which these problems are all being solved by money printing is accelerating. I think I saw a statistic that the U.S. has printed more money last month than in the over 200 years.
Yes.
And this is, it's just the end game. That, again, if your definition of money has anything to do with scarcity, then don't have any of your wealth tied into the U.S. dollar, because Trump is literally throwing trillions, like balling up $1 trillion bills and trying to hit them in the wastebasket. It's like, they're trashing the currency so severely at this moment. And there is no end to it, because they're in I guess what you could call a liquidity trap, where at some point, all the money printing in the world is not going to stop interest rates from going higher. And then that'll be game over.
Well, every single thing you look at that the US does in the past few years is just classic end of empire. It's so remarkable how similar it is to the collapse of the Roman Empire, with a little bit of the end of the Spanish Empire when they were a bit crazy, remember, with their religious fundamentalism. But with the US, it's like there seems to be, they obviously know, if even Goldman Sachs is like saying that the dollar's toast, and that's the only reason why they're printing it like this. And they know there's no way out of it, right? They know they can't, especially because all of the money printing has mostly been to the benefit of the boomers who have all the political power. The New York Post has an amazing piece today, by the way, about millennials versus boomers. And the most remarkable thing in it was they noted that boomers hold something like 80% of all political power in Congress and the Senate. So, the US has three branches of government: the legislative, judiciary, and the executive branch. And, our democracy is like we changed the executive branch, but the other two are lifetime appointments essentially at this point because of gerrymandering, because of lobbyists, because of the way corporate power is just held. And the way people are themselves, like everybody knows Nancy Pelosi in her district, and they love her, and they're familiar, and they know her, and the power of incumbency also gives you a lot of power. Certainly, like Nancy Pelosi can just never be ousted because of the reins she holds over the printing press by the Treasury. So you have these people who are in power for 40, 50, 60 years. And it's just like the end of Rome, where, the senators were lifetime appointments, and they were very corrupt. And then the executive branch then decided, well, if they're going to be lifetime appointments, then I'm going to be a lifetime dictator. And, it's very similar to then, and the same sort of end of empire, and the same sort of like, we can't compete, so we're just going to smash and grab TikTok. Okay.
Yeah. TikTok is like Gaul was to Caesar.
Yeah.
TikTok is to Trump. And
Yeah.
he's like, we're going to conquer TikTok for the empire because it's held by the Chinese. We need to invade TikTok and conquer it for the empire to distract people from the fact that the empire is falling apart. So, and that's not going well either. And of course, the retribution from China to therefore ban Facebook and other social media companies would seem to be very detrimental to those companies. So this is turning into a very hot situation.
But they're on the one hand, they are projecting. So, I mean, they're telling you right now, like everything Edward Snowden said is true, and it's still going on. Every single thing you tweet, every single thing you DM, all the stuff that we don't smash and grab, we already have a back door. So we're happy with them to exist. They clearly do not have a back door to TikTok, and this is part of the reason why they're angry. So like, it's bizarre. For me, I know everybody's different, but when I read these people who are like, do you want the Chinese government to have your DMs? And I'm like, what are they going to do to me? Like, I'd rather have, if somebody's going to be viewing everything I do, I'd rather have somebody with no power to tax me or take my stuff. Like, I'd rather have them. And knowing that the US government is clearly unable to access it, well, then I'd rather have that than if I'm going to use something like, obviously I know everything is being tracked and monitored, so I don't put anything that I really care about online. But the other thing is like, it's interesting how Trump doesn't deal with all those niceties. He just like talks, he's like talks like a New Yorker, and like, this is what I want and this is what it's about. And it's like, you see the moment that this all started, this whole Cold War with China, and also notice like how the political elite, the media elite, instantly, they all have their propaganda. They have the anti-Russia stuff. Then now it's China. Before it was Libya, Gaddafi. Like, they move so instantly, like on a dime. They turn on a dime. Everybody on Twitter, all the political opinion immediately changes overnight. So here, but if you look objectively from the outside, you see that it was Huawei. Something dawned on our corporations, and when they realized like we have no 5G capacity, and we don't have the technology, we don't have the ability to build it. We can't even build masks. We can't make masks. So how are we going to make 5G technology? So when they realized that how far ahead China was, then they were like, well, we don't have, it's going to take 5 to 10 years. That's what was in the paper at the time. 5 to 10 years to build up our own capacity to create 5G, in which case they're going to be on 6G. So we might as well just like start a war, right? Because we can't let them beat us.
Yeah. Trump is like the Joe Pesci of American presidents. He's like, "What? Hey, Xi Jinping, How about, what, you telling me to go back and shine them shoes? How about if I whack you and take your TikTok, huh? How about that, Xiping? It's very, very, very basic street gangs of New York, street warfare.
Well, I prefer that because it's just then you know what it's all about. Like I don't like all that like smile. Hey, yeah, let's do a trade deal. And then like, it's all behind your back and they're stabbing you and sabotaging you. It's just like
Well, there is a lot of data out there. I like this idea of other countries own other countries' data. So, like China owns all the DMs for Americans, America owns all the DMs for China, France owns all the DM for Germany, Germany has the DMs for France. So everybody knows everybody else's stuff, but they themselves don't know each other's stuff. So that way, you keep the balance of power to the people, and no government has monopoly value over their own population stuff. That could be a good way to distribute power.
that's kind of the whole notion behind the sovereign individuals, the people who collect passports and then always live wherever they don't hold the passport. So they
Yeah.
could avoid having, the tyranny of whoever has official power over you based on where your nationality or passport
You
is.
got to be agile. That's all our friend over there, the international man. He is
Nick Jambruno.
Nick Jambruno. He's also, he lives in places with the least taxes, or he's got the passport of the most mobility, global mobility, travel mobility, least taxes. You've got to play the big macro game, and not get stuck into any one geographic location, because then you're a sitting duck.
Yep. Well, that's us sitting here right like this. But that's also a good thing about people who spend a lot on real estate. That's one thing that Max and I have always said for the past 17 years of making content, is that you are a sitting duck with real estate. Sure, most people are brainwashed into that this is the way to the middle class and blah blah blah, and it's better than wasting it on rent. But on the other hand, wait until you see what happens to New York City now that New York is going to be bankrupt after bailing out everybody, because all states will be because of the pandemic. So they already pay really high property taxes in Manhattan. I don't know what it's going to be like after this, but from the property taxes is where they pay for the police, the fire department, and the schools. So they're going to go after you for those taxes, and it's going to be, they already started it, right? Trump knows what he's doing. Is like when he got rid of that SALT deduction where you can't write off anything more than 10,000. He really called off that, like, that's what I'm talking about, that duplicity. Okay. This notion that, like, hey, we're socialists. One, like Bono is a good one. Like, hey, why don't we spend more on foreign aid? I myself don't want to pay taxes, and I don't pay any. But why don't you people, make me feel good about myself? I'm going to go deliver your charity to, Somalia, and I'm going to take the credit for it, though I didn't pay any taxes.
No, you too. We run our IP tax through the Netherlands as part of the Dutch sandwich, and we don't pay taxes, but we think everyone else should.
Exactly. And so you have, the same thing with New York City and New York and California. So one of the things that, one of the ways that they're able to, be like, deliver all of these more socialist compared to some of the red states, say, policies, is that there's been these loopholes like that. Is like, say they have 40,000 a year in their property tax, they've always been able to write it off against their federal tax. So they didn't really care that the property tax was really high in Manhattan in order to pay for all these services. And because it was deducted from their federal tax. But now Trump capped it at 10,000. So now they're all like fleeing to places like Florida, North Carolina, Texas. So they're fleeing the taxes, and so they weren't actually happy paying for all that stuff. The people who paid the most, therefore, were the poorer people who were renting, who had a worse property and stuff like that they weren't able to deduct, and they were still paying outsized taxes on their lower valued property.
Right. Well, if at a certain income level, really, you don't pay taxes, or you offset those taxes by capital gains by having exposure to markets. So 85% of the markets are held by less than 10% of the population, and they're hedged those positions in a way where they essentially offset their taxes. So you don't really pay taxes after a certain level. So all the taxes are really regressive. They just penalize poor people. That's all taxes do. And they're disguised as, well, we need taxes to help build public housing and help things. That's completely false in terms of the actual cost and the cost benefit to lower income people. That's completely false. It's unsadly, but people buy that nonsense.
But the interesting thing to see is now to try to think through the whole all the consequences and the delayed reactions and other reactions down the road towards what Trump is trying to do with this, getting rid of the payroll tax, because the payroll tax is actually considered one of the less progressive taxes, because it does pay for Social Security and I guess some towards Medicaid, but it stops, like, you have to pay something like 9 or 10% out of your paycheck, but anybody earning over 100,000, like, it's capped at 100,000. So if you're earning 2,000,000 a year, you're not paying any out of the next 110,000. So there, it's considered therefore very not, it's regressive, right? So it's penalizing somebody working at McDonald's versus somebody working at Bridgewater Capital. So
The whole idea of taxing income at all is stupid.
yeah,
There should be a property tax if you need to apply some taxes that not on
unearned gains.
not on income though. Don't tax income. That's never going to work. It's always going to result in tears. But taxing property, that's something different. I mean, that can be done in a way that makes some sense, but never tax income. That's stupid.
It's stupid. Also, unearned gains is just obvious. Usually it's because of like all the collective or government policy or whatever. Like a lot of it is luck. Think of like along the High Line in New York City. You've lived in New York City for decades and know the area very well. All along the High Line, through Hell's Kitchen and stuff, the name tells you everything you need to know. It's like it was a scary, dangerous area. And then the city and state government contributed to building the High Line. It was a overhead tracks for when the meat packing district used to be there, and they would bring in the meat from off the ships and bring it down to the meat packing district. So they redid it and designed it, and it's amazing and beautiful outdoor space. But all the properties all along the High Line that was developed with $1 billion of city tax, and they doubled, tripled, and quadrupled in price over the course of 10 years based on this High Line.
Yeah, that's true. And that's absolutely true. But whether that's luck or not luck, or still, now, of course, those properties have been cut in half.
Yeah, yeah, because well, certainly all the new builds, because it was
Yeah,
remarkable how many huge towers were going
yeah. I
up.
just saw a place in Chelsea was listed at 24 million, and now it's up for sale for 8 million. Right. So these high end flats in New York City are getting marked down 50, 60%, and then it could be marked down another huge percentage now going forward. And the property tax on that flat was like 150,000 a year plus other taxes.
The HOA sort of thing, the service charges.
Right. So you're
Also.
paying 250,000 a year for your $10 million flat in an environment in a city where now they've got open drug use, open drug bazaars. The police have walked away. The subway was already dilapidated, and infrastructure is collapsing. So this looks like a real bad situation in New York City.
Yeah, because remember, you're also that sort of high end. So once it got to that sort of price, no American earns that much money because they can't, because of taxes here. But America's the biggest tax haven in the world. They welcome any money stolen from Eastern Europe, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Russia, Ukraine, Poland, Europe, Asia, Latin America. You can steal money from there and loot your nation and take billions. And if you can get safe haven, they won't investigate it in the United States. They want your money, right? So, however, with the pandemic and also the fact that, like we said, like we're a falling empire, is that a falling empire starts lashing out. So we hate the Chinese now, on top of the Russians, and then we hated some of the Arabs. We had to kill some of them because our audience, our WWE audience, like our voters demanded something that the Bush family friends, the Bin Ladens, attacked us. So we have to kill some people just to make it look good. So once you those sort of buyers, like the ones that just looted, like if you steal $100 million and somebody's offering you safe haven with just buy a property or whatever, you don't care if you only get 20 million of that 100 million. You can lose the 80 million easily because you stole it, right? It's like it's better than nothing.
Money laundering.
Yeah, it's money laundering. So now you have these distressed buyers or sellers, and any of those Chinese buyers were huge buyers in Manhattan. But now they see what's happening, and they would be stupid to hold on to that property, right? They better dump it, because the only reason why they can afford a 20, 30, 40, $50 million property over Central Park, all those new buildings on the Billionaires Row in Manhattan, the only reason why they could afford that is that they are friends with somebody in the Communist Party in China and got kickbacks or whatever. So they're going to be, it might get confiscated, right, by the US government. So they better dump it. If they bought it for 50 million, they'll sell it for 10. They don't care. They just want out as quick as possible. So if you're the Joe Bag of Donuts, who's worked at a hedge fund in Connecticut, and you have 100 million to your name, and you put 50 million into the property next door to this Chinese person, and suddenly they're willing to drop down to 10 million for the property, like your net worth has just dropped.
Speaking of money laundering, so in Hong Kong, people are desperate to get their gold out of Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And because they feared that the mainland Chinese government's going to come in there and grab it. So there's a lot of gold moving out of Hong Kong right now
to Singapore.
And of course, Bitcoin is perfect for that kind of thing. You can move your wealth using Bitcoin a lot easier than trying to move half a ton of gold. Pro tip.
Well, I think Peter Schiff he went a little bit crazy, right, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, where he said something like, I don't know why, he was just trolling, right? He said it's easier to move $1 million worth of gold than it is Bitcoin.
Right. Well, I don't see how he could say that. It doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, it's a patently false statement, but that's gets traction.
Try moving just $10,000 worth of gold. Try getting on a flight with that. See how difficult it is.
Yeah, it's hard to move gold and silver, and this is one of the great advantages of Bitcoin. And so this is what people are learning, because capital flight's a big issue now. As all these territories are going to go into a more hostile situation, people are going to want to move their money away, move it around. They're looking for safe havens, and gold's going a lot higher. Silver's going a lot higher. Bitcoin's going a lot higher, because we're entering into a period of deglobalization. Banks don't trust each other anymore, like they didn't trust each other in 2008, but it's a lot worse now. And de-dollarization, depopulation, de-Chinification. So we're entering into the quadruple D across the board.
Depression,
and gold looking good. Silver and Bitcoin looking good now.
Damn right. Whoever this Pippi Longstockings was that didn't like my orange eyeshadow, I just looked at it and I realized, like, I like this orange eyeshadow. I think it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool. Yeah, I saw it. I said, oh, it looks pretty cool.
I think it looks interesting, right?
Yeah, it looks cool. It looks nice. Nothing unappealing about it. I mean, who would not like it, really? I mean, it's the taste of the average person online is quite poor. They don't really have much of an aesthetic, do they?
Except for obviously people who watch Lockdown with the Keisers.
Yeah, I mean that's true, but even so, the people coming in there, it's not like they're,
These are not sofas. These are chairs.
This is a chair.
Somebody said they match your sofa. I'm like,
this is a chair. See, there's a space here. If it was connected, you could maybe call it a love seat, maybe, but not definitely not either. It's a chair. These are two chairs. This is chair. This is a chair. Two chairs.
Right. Somebody says Swan Bitcoin, and of course we must mention
Swan. Where's Swan? Where's our Swan?
Where's my Swan? Well, I've been doing a lot of work in here. Oh, I can go get you some if you want, but I see the two over there. But
no, that's it. One of them is not a swan. There's a swan, and then there's a stork. No, a flamingo.
There's two swans there.
Two swans.
One on the left, one on the right.
Oh, the one's hiding behind a basket. Then there's a flamingo, and then there's another swan, and then there's Hoddle Cat is in the background as well.
Hoddle Knot. Yeah. Yeah. So right. So what I was going to say is, you can go if you're starting to just enter these bull markets. There's gold, there's silver, and there's Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Paul Tudor Jones says that Bitcoin is going to be the fastest horse in this race.
Yep.
And it's not too late. Okay. Because you can still, it's not too late because you can still buy silver, gold, or Bitcoin with US dollars or any other fiat. So that proves to you that it's not too late, right? Because there will be a point where nobody will take any of your fiat, even if you have $1 trillion to give them, they won't give you their Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a good point. At some point, like, when I came to London after having been to Scotland, right? I told the story a couple of weeks ago. I'm in the taxi and I go to pay the taxi and he looks at my £5 note and he says, "I can't take this, mate." And I'm like, "What's wrong?" He goes, "This is from Scotland." I'm like, "What do you mean it's from Scotland?" It says right there, Scotland. And I said, "Look, it's the same frickin' Queen Elizabeth. It's a £5 note here in Great Britain." He's like, "No, mate, I'm not taking that dirty Scottish money." So I had to give him, an English £5 note. So it can happen very, very quickly. People can just suddenly say, "You know what? I'm not taking that paper money." And it can happen overnight. And that's happened before in history. And it's going to happen again with the US dollar. It's just going to be like, and think about it. It's just a piece of paper with a serial number on it and that they print by the trillions. And it very quickly, people can say, "I'm not going to take it." Just like you can't go to Paris, you can't go to Germany, you can't go to Qatar, you can't go to Bangkok and spend your dollars anywhere. You have to convert them to the local currency. So just like that, your paper money is worthless. And so that's what's coming. That's what's happening.
Yeah, the way that it works in the United Kingdom is it says a Scottish £5 note or 10 or 20, and it says legal tender. But the merchant doesn't have to accept it in England. They don't have to accept a Scottish pound, but it is legal tender. You can pay for the goods.
Yeah.
But if you go into a bank, they'll take it. I guess they have to.
In a bank, yeah. But it just shows you that the money it's entirely based on the collective of the population that this piece of paper has exchange value.
It's like Ethereum.
It's like Ethereum, that there's the population of Ethereum's shared delusion that it's somehow related to money. It's a software project called Ethereum, and you can do software like stuff with it. Okay. But it's got nothing to do with money. You can't confuse it with money or Bitcoin. Don't do that. That's just a classic mistake. And people, when I say that, or anyone else says that, they say, "Why are you being negative on the project?" And I'm not being negative on the project. I'm simply stating a categorical truth that Ethereum is not and should not be equated to money in any sense of that word as we understand the word money. As a software project, it's very amusing and a lot of kids like to play with it. And I assume, blah, 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 but it has nothing to do with a serious project like Bitcoin.
That's good. So Bitcoin, if you want to start accumulating that, you go to swanbitcoin.com/max, MAX, right? You can't misspell that, right? I'm trying to think of any way somebody would misspell Max.
MACKS.
Oh, like I guess I could think it's like an Apple Mac, and they might think we're
MAC.
MACS, like you were talking about the plural of a Mac.
Yeah. Or yeah, like I'd be uptown and I'm like macking it.
Macking
That's
it.
like pimping it. I'm like the big granddaddy pimp.
You're
I'm the
you're showing
Mac.
your age. Like nobody's
I'd be
talked like that
macking it.
since the.
No,
Uh,
I'm pretty sure that they still talk about the Mac man macking in certain quarters of our fine cities. I believe. I think that's still the case. Okay, that's just the way it is. I be macking. You be macking. I be macking. You be macking. I'm conjugating the verb to mac, as it were.
I miss the words of the 70s. The 70s in New York like was the place to go for new words.
We mac. You mac. They are macking.
Dig it, like you're digging it.
I'm digging
Like,
it, man. I dig it. Well, yeah, those are the old. You don't hear that so much anymore. Dig. You dig, right? That was pretty big. You dig. Now, of course, it was pretty surprising the first time somebody. I heard it on that show, The Wire, when they're like, "You feel me?"
feel
Like
me.
I'm like, "Whoa, what's this all about?" I get it. I mean, you do feel it right away. Like it is. It's very you know, it's very sympathetic when somebody says, "Do you feel me? You feel me?" You do have an
It's an
empathetic,
appeal. It's an appeal to empathy.
right? It's an appeal to empathy, and it does work. I mean, you do have, you do feel, you do suddenly have it. You suddenly are feeling something
Yeah.
by bringing this up. So it's like, eh, I mean, at some point, I think that was veering toward, "Do you smell me?" But I don't think that lasted. I think that's a rare case when you saw some argot kind of uh, percolate in the city, and but it didn't make it to prime time, and that was, "Do you smell me? You
Oh
smell
yeah.
me?"
Oh yeah. Somebody's mentioned that in the Deuce. They say lots of Macs in that show.
Right, from the 70s.
The
Yeah,
Deuce was really good. I mean, it genuinely felt like you were in
yeah,
1970s Times
stunning,
Square.
achievement, the Deuce.
Yeah.
Having lived there in the 70s in New York and being in that neighborhood often, I can tell you that was brilliantly conceived, and the ending I thought was incredible. Just the way they flash forwarded to contemporary times, and you see the characters 20, 30 years older, and Times Square has become Disneyfied, and it was really well done.
But the fact that they did that ending in the modern time, I thought was, I mean, they missed an opportunity because obviously when they started filming it, Trump wasn't president, but Trump was like came of age right when it starts, right? The late 60s. Well, or it starts in 63, right? 64, somewhere like that. So, that's when he was like a teenager,
Yeah,
just starting to work for his dad and the property development thing, and then he bought the hotel right above Grand Central, right off Times Square in 1970, 71, 72, somewhere around there. So with the second season, where that is, I think maybe it was like 69 and then 73 was the next season, somewhere around there. So he's like, that's him. Like, this is the sleazy world he came from. So you can't remove the guy from the context of which he was there. Like, that was New York in 1970s. Like, you couldn't be a modern, like, trans bathroom, like, okay, woke sort of person back then. Like, that didn't exist, right? Somebody who spoke with sort of like niceties didn't exist in Times Square in the 1970s. Like, you would have been stabbed to death if you talked like that.
yeah, I think about it a lot because New York's suddenly quickly gone back into this funky 70s type of environment, right? So we're revisiting the Deuce in a lot of ways, and the Disney element is being pushed out. So the question is, how is that really going to sink in and take? Is it going to take a generation for that to change as it did in the previous transformation, which took 20, 25 years to move from urban flight or white flight and the beginning of destitution in the inner city, and then it was gentrified, and then it became corporatized and Disneyfied, and now under COVID, it's going back into essentially being abandoned and deindustrialized, de-economized. So is this going to be a 6 month pop, or is this going to be a 5 to 10 year process?
Well, think of Times Square 1969 to 1974 versus now. Back then, it was freaks everywhere. Everywhere you looked was a freak. And so many black people, so many. What is it now? It's all white. But they speak woke. Everybody's woke. But the reality on the ground is that there are no minorities there. And back then it was like nobody, everybody spoke vulgar, right? It was very vulgar, and nobody had time for your shit. Like nobody had time for that sort of stuff. And they just like, who cares who's a freak? Like, okay, you want to wear no clothes, go ahead. Fucking no, wear no clothes, just give me my money, give me my fucking money. Like they don't care about what you're doing with your life. It was all about hustling, right? You're just on the hustle. So now it's all like, so many of the most woke areas are also the most segregated. Like they're extremely white, extremely privileged, extremely well off, and they
Right. It's easy to be woke now because you're not at risk of actually having to
encounter freaks all
encounter
day.
freaks all day. But during the time when everything was freaky, it was a little bit too dangerous to be woke, right? Woke is something you do when you have absolutely no risk of being people that you claim to be woke from.
I mean, you lived in New York at that time, and that is covered, by the way, as well in this series. The Deuce is the gay scene was like wild, right? It was like it wasn't like there was no safe space for them, right? I mean, right now they talk about everybody in the woke community and the media talks about safe spaces and all this stuff, and monitoring and policing words.
Hmm.
But there they like it was a huge community walking around. It wasn't like, you know, again, like everybody, there was a place for everybody, every nationality. There's 600 languages spoken in Manhattan. Like
Right.
it's like nobody has time to bother with anybody. It was just like hustling because everything was hustling. You had to hustle. And if now everybody's a Karen, right? Because they have too much time. It's too decadent. They're like, who's that person out there doing that? I'm going to stop them having that fun. It's like, anybody like wasting their time calling the
Right.
cops on somebody in Manhattan in 1970 because they were playing loud music or something? The worst they're going to do is open their window and say, shut the fuck up.
Right. Well, you had the Stonewall riots at the Stonewall bar in the Village. Was the beginning of the gay rights, the new chapter in gay rights liberation. And that really came out in a huge way, quote unquote. So you had so the gay population that was closeted really just completely came out, and you had the gay parades, and you had um,
Lou Reed.
right, and the music, was centered around, let's say, Studio 54, and disco was very much gay music, uh, cultural phenomenon in the clubs, where you had now sex openly in the clubs, and you had this pulsating disco music. I mean, it was very different than rock music, and this went right up into AIDS, right? So AIDS hit during the late 70s, early 80s, or during the early that Reagan transition to Reagan. And that was like a bomb going off in the gay community in New York and all over the world. So I don't know exactly what percentage, but 20, 30% or more of the gay population was literally wiped out.
Mm.
And but between, let's say, Stonewall riots and when AIDS became a huge thing, was that was definitely fueling the party scene in New York City. So even if you weren't gay, you were still influenced into to the extent that clubs were running 24/7, and there was incredible lifestyle. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here by saying that the lifestyle was a bit over the top in terms of
Yeah,
the
we've seen the
the
image.
indulgences that were going on.
That was in the second season of The Deuce. You see it in the titles. Like you definitely see all the like all the dancing at the disco, all the men in the little tiny hot shorts, and
Right. I mean, I tell the story that even me as a teenager and a young college student at NYU, I found myself as a go-go dancer at a lesbian bar, for a period of time, just because that's how pervasive that kind of culture was. So I was doing stand-up comedy. I was hanging out in clubs doing comedy. And so I ended up bartending at Trudy Heller's down in the village. And then next thing I know, I'm on the bar dancing and it's a bunch of lesbians going on. But there's just so much, you just get caught up in it, right? That's just the way you get caught up in it.
and but that sort of moment, like when you're talking about the comedy, you had Jerry Seinfeld there, you had Larry David, you had Robin Williams. So you were there like with all those guys, but it's that sort of environment of totally politically incorrect. Nothing happening. The police were gone, right? Remember, the city was bankrupt, so there were no police anywhere. Everything was a huge murder rate, not as high as say 1980. It was still going up, but it was just like anarchy, chaos, and freedom.
Yeah, and to look at it through the comedy scene, I mean, obviously Richard Pryor comedy was
Mm,
very outrageous, and I don't think he would be accepted today. I
no.
don't think he would be allowed to do his act today.
Mm.
But his act was very over the top. But I mean, it was healing. A lot of times what people perceive as being offensive is actually healing in the context of the comedian. The comedian can act in times as the shaman who's helping the people that see a bigger truth, and sometimes they use crude means, a rock or a stone, a dance, right? The
Mm.
shaman is doing crude things, you don't know what's going on, but the community gets entranced, and then they have a greater truth that takes them out of their provincialism, their petty dictatorships. Right. So the comedian does this similarly in society. They are the modern shaman equivalent. And certainly we have examples of that. I think Robin Williams is a good example. He's a bit of a shaman who whips the crowd up. I mean, I've seen him perform live many, many times, and his ability to whip up that crowd is really phenomenal. So now today, everyone's just assumed to be malevolent. And if you say anything, it's just automatically interpreted as being offensive.
So, well, let's follow that because those were the boomers, like we were saying. Trump is the first generation, the first year of the boomers. So he's coming into Times Square at that time, and it's all like free flowing culture. Like you had punk rock, you had rock and roll, you had art, you had all this like amazing art scene. Then you were having the early days of which would lead to rap, right? The early spoken word sort of singers like Gil Scott Heron were up there in Harlem. So you had all of this like amazing confluence, partly because property prices were so cheap, so low in Manhattan because nobody wanted to live there. It was dangerous, right? So it was like super cheap there. Everybody came in. And then 1982, the bull market starts in, the stock markets and the bond market. But it's also like when AIDS really hit. And how did the boomers then respond? Like really viciously. They were horrible. Like they all like just went Reagan and they supported Reagan. They voted for him twice in a landslide. They became yuppies. But if you read read an amazing piece like a year or two ago, and it was this huge profile of this woman who took in all these guys dying of AIDS,
Yeah.
and they were totally abandoned by their families, everybody. People were so afraid of them. It's hard to describe like what it was like back in the early 80s, but there was a sense that like AIDS was everywhere. You were going to get it touching the doorknob and or going to the public
Right,
toilets.
right.
And
Actually, in that case, I think that Princess Diana
yes,
was actually did a magnanimous thing, right? That she shook an AIDS patient's
like in 1986.
right hand or something like that, and that was really changed the global perception in a big way. Usually I'm slamming everything about the British people and the monarchy, but in that case, I would have to say that she really, and then she started all these drives with Elton John and Elizabeth Taylor and all these people, and all these things.
No,
And
but
that,
her touching the hand of that
yeah,
AIDS patient was remarkable. And it was like something that was at that time, like, again, this is just the context of the reality we lived in and what the social mores and stuff
yeah,
were at the time. But the boomers, turned against the gay population. It was like they regretted what they did in the 70s in New York, and their loose lifestyle and sexual revolution, and it was very
right. And it played into the hands of the evangelicals, certainly,
it became
because they felt that this was God's punishment for having a decadent lifestyle, and then that fueled a conservative, backbone of a conservative revolution. When George W. Bush took office, he kind of made a bargain with the devil, didn't he? Because he knew that he had a good, strong evangelical base, but he also knew that to let that genie out of the bottle could be a big problem. And that led to a huge mobilization of the evangelical vote, which got behind Trump. So Trump has really got that evangelical vote in a big way, even though on the surface he was saying things like he was grabbing female genitalia. He made that comment, and you'd think he would not be a hero of the evangelicals, and yet he is a hero of the evangelicals through that there's a whole story behind it in the
King
Bible of
Cyrus.
King Cyrus. You can look up the details of that.
Yeah, well, it's very evangelical, which is why Netanyahu's always he himself calls Trump King Cyrus, the born again King Cyrus, and again, like a lot of this information is out there, and then you tune into MSNBC and CNN, and they act like snide, sneering little Karens, and they don't understand anything. They
Mm.
don't even try to understand the context of. They're like, ooh, look, Trump had an affair with this stripper. Why do the evangelicals still like him? And you're like, duh, because Saint King Cyrus would do that. Like, you
Exactly.
don't even understand like the people you're trying to snide against.
No, they're very poor, even in being snide. They're B string. They're not even A string players.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing is like, especially if you're a commentator on life, if that's your job, running a commentary show on cable news, like you can't really take positions. You have to understand where, like, okay, those people believe that Jesus is about to return in the next 5 years. That's why they do this. Like, you have to just you have to try to understand. You have to have feel me, right? You have to have empathy. You have to
Mm,
understand where a community is coming from, and not just spend your whole time mocking them. Is like, this is where they're coming from. Even like we try to understand. Like, I understand the whole MMT thing, right? Because people have been looking for the last since 1971, and they see that the banks keep on getting bailed out, and there's plenty of money for the banks, and any mistake they make, they get money. So why not us? Like, if it works for them, like, it makes perfect sense that you would just print it for us, right?
yeah.
So you have to kind of understand where crazy ideas, or maybe just to you, maybe you're the only one that thinks these ideas are crazy.
Well, clearly at the moment there's the fragmentation going on, and there is no consensus about anything, and we're heading into pure anarchy. So that's like New York City in the 70s. It was very anarchistic and very like 24/7 party on, Garth. Like just nonstop party. I mean, that's the upside. This generation of millennials and Gen Z, you've got some great partying ahead of you because the world will be falling apart. There's going to be a lot of crazy violence and extremism in every direction possible. But that's really the where you get down and party the hardest. You don't want to be partying like 1990s or the 2000s where it's like Bill Gates and dancing
Oh yeah.
on that famous GIF
Who's Steve
Ballmer,
Ballmer.
Steve Ballmer and Bill Gates dancing, right? You don't want to go to that party. That's not a good party. You want to go to the uptown world's coming to an end. Everyone's completely out of their head party. That's the party you want to go to.
The other thing, of course, which we missed, and it is covered in the Deuce a bit, but the whole mafia, right? That they did provide some sort of order within the chaos of Manhattan, and you did have to know like which territory was which territory. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah. The mob was huge until Giuliani came, and he got rid of the mob in New York. And they had the whole Fulton Fish Market down on Fulton Street in Manhattan was mobbed up. And I lived there for a couple of years on Fulton Street. That's the first apartment I had in New York City was on Fulton Street. And I lived in this industrial warehouse, and I think the rent was $80 a month
God.
for this flat on Fulton Street. And okay, talk about parties. So, if you go out clubbing at around 5 a.m., the clubs start to thin out. But you can go down to the Fulton Street Fish Market and things are just getting started because all these truck drivers are arriving with fish or to pick up fish, or the fish markets are opening essentially. And so the bars are opening at 5 a.m. and a lot of fantastic brawls in those bars on Fulton Street. And these guys in the fish business, the fish market, have those huge hooks that they use to move the boxes of fish around that they have on their shoulders. So everyone's at the bar drinking heavily with these weapons on their shoulders, right? And so of course fights break out and people are whacking each other with these big hooks and there's blood everywhere. It's just a great way to start your day. It's fantastic.
And then, I mean, it's crazy to think, okay, if you go to Sparks when you go to New York City, right? It's right near Grand Central, prime location now, 1985. Paul Castellano gets gunned down right outside it. Like, it's so like central, like Manhattan, right? This is tourist area, posh banks, JP Morgan's only a few blocks away.
By Gotti, John Gotti.
So my uncle was like, on the case, like he was a detective working on the what do they call them, the squad, basically following these guys. So he was supposed to be on that night. He did, but he didn't work. But he was on Gotti, and Gotti had him killed, have him whacked. Right. It's 85. That's so recently.
Yeah,
right?
it's a big move, big power play. The Gotti hit on Paul Castellano for sure. Yeah, it's pretty recent. So Giuliani came around and he cleaned up Wall Street, cleaned up the mob, and he became the mayor. And that's the Giuliani story. But they were a huge part of the city. So the mob, and that's in the Deuce as well. The mobsters are everywhere. They're running the club scene and the porn shops and the strip clubs in Times Square, and it's all mafia run.
But you understand, like when you watch Giuliani now on Fox News, he's obviously older, so he's not very as articulate, but he had to have been very articulate to be a DA there in Manhattan and then take on the mob, right? That's why he's like a thug, right? You can't just take on the five families and just be like some schmuck. Like you have to be.
Yeah, no, Giuliani as DA was a tough guy. He was a tough son of a bitch who went after the mob and cleaned it up, got him out of the Manhattan. That's for sure.
But again, like nobody provides these sort of context. Everybody makes fun of Giuliani now, but you're like, the context of this guy is that Manhattan of the Deuce, and he took on the freaking mob, which was insane, right? Because they were entrenched for 100 years. Like nobody could get them out. They got whacked, right? But somehow he managed to survive by taking them out. That was interesting, actually. What was it, last year or the year before, when some kid assassinated Gambino, the head of the Gambino crime family?
Oh yeah, by accident, right? He thought it was. He didn't understand really the whole situation, so he kind of accidentally wiped out a mafia kingpin. That's they definitely don't want to do that.
Yeah, and back in Sicily, they were it was a big story. And again, my uncle, who was in the organized crime squad, he was like, "Oh my God, this kid doesn't know what he's done to his family.
Right.
Like he doesn't." This is pretty dangerous, but who knows? They've kind of been neutered.
Yeah, the mobs. Well, it kind of when it all went corporate, didn't it? Right. So
they're all yuppies.
Yeah, they all went into banking. Like the mafia did go into investment banking. During the boom years of the 80s, a lot of mobs went into to the smaller penny stock shops on Wall Street and did a lot of these bucket shops and things like that. Became kind of infiltrated with mobsters.
Max is talking about Bitcoin. This is speaking.
Hodl. What do you want to know about Bitcoin? How about the regression theorem? I proved that the regression theorem is wrong.
We're gonna talk about that on Orange Pill, the first episode.
All right. I look forward to that.
So we're recording that on Thursday or Friday. and then we will air it the following day or two.
Oh, that sounds good.
But we'll be talking about Bitcoin. What else do you want to know about Bitcoin? Basically, you
Yeah.
should start dollar cost averaging.
wanna know about Bitcoin?
You can go to swanbitcoin.com/max. Okay. You spell max MAX.
Yeah.
Okay.
MAX.
Now people are going to be like, oh, those are Illuminati signs.
That's my gang sign. Yeah, this is I'm with part of the Swan Bitcoin gang.
The Gambino family is going to come in here. I wish we had that earthquake while we were sitting here live with you, because that was so exciting. I went running to the other side of the house and I was like, Max,
yeah,
did you feel that earthquake?
No.
And he's like, what earthquake? I was like,
no, I was sleeping.
You were like, it was, I thought it because.
But you're always hearing in earthquakes, though. This is like the 10th earthquake this month.
Not what?
Yeah, you're always like, there's an earthquake. There's an earthquake.
No, I don't.
I think I figured oh man, this is never true, is it? So it actually happened?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It was like, at first I thought it was one of the Black Hawk or
the helicopters,
one of those attack helicopters flying
yeah.
low, because Fort Bragg is not too far down there, and sometimes they fly low on their exercises. And I thought it was like, because it was like boom, 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 boom. So I thought it was like the helicopter blades in the distance.
Yeah.
And then the ground was shaking, and I noticed all the windows like rattling, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, how do we have an earthquake in North Carolina?
That's cool. I like that.
You like it? You didn't even experience it.
Because I didn't experience it.
I feel like
I like it because I never felt it.
That was like when I was living in Los Angeles in '94 for the Northridge earthquake. My roommate, her boyfriend, and Doug Lyman, all our friends, like all these people we hung out with all the time, they were in Palm Springs, but I did not go because I had to work. So I was the only one home. So none of them experienced the massive earthquake.
Yeah.
So there was we didn't have that shared experience, and there were like 1,000 aftershocks in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So I was like constantly like, it's coming again. Here's the big one. And they didn't understand like all my panic, like, because they didn't experience that massive.
You know, this
Andy Warhol.
This is obviously like, this is somebody made a funny.
You have to hold it up for that
Warhol like picture of Max Keiser, right? And then 3 weeks ago, my Twitter stream was filled with people saying, "Why do you have a picture of Craig Wright on your bookshelf?" And they're convinced that that's Craig Wright, and that I say nasty things about Craig Wright, and yet I have his portrait on my bookshelf. That doesn't make any sense. That's how word people get. Their minds become spaghettified. They become jelly in between the ears.
Max Keiser, who do you purchase coins through? Again, we go to
Swan.
Swan.
Oh, I'm gonna have to get the Swan now. God damn it, you people make me have to work down. I have to do stuff.
Swan is vibrating the camera.
Well, that's fine.
Tiptoe.
It's an earthquake. It's an earthquake. See, this is a flamingo. This is not a swan.
It's not a swan.
Just like that is Max, and that's not Craig Wright. Okay, do you understand the difference? This is a swan. Look at this. See, it has little lights on. Disco swan. Disco swan. Woo! Woo! Woo!
Yeah.
Okay, this is where you get your Bitcoin, is at swanbitcoin.com/max. And you can start buying Bitcoin really just for like $10 or whatever.
$10. It's the cheapest one out there if you're going to dollar cost average. Also, but most importantly, you can withdraw to your own hardware wallet. And of course, we do recommend a company that we are invested in, which is Casa, and that you go to them at keys.casa.
Yep.
Casa is spelled CASA, keys.casa, and they help secure your coins with multi-sig. You are always in possession of your own coins.
Multi-sig.
So those are the places. people ask, you can't use Swan Bitcoin in Europe. That's true. So you can use coinfloor.co.uk/max as well there. And they're available all through Europe. They're available everywhere, really, except for the United States. So
That's right.
Because we're the untouchables. Nobody wants to touch us.
That's it, man. But we're shareholders of Swan too.
Yes, we are. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah,
Yes,
we're shareholders
we
of
are.
Casa and Swan, and
we only
a
invest
lot
in
of other things.
like we invest pretty much in anything we use. So we invest in Bitcoin, gold, and silver, but we invest in gold money. We invest in Square, Cash App, because we use that for like sudden purchases.
Yeah, we have a lot of Square stock just because we noticed that once they went into Bitcoin, this would be like another only listed leveraged Bitcoin play on the stock exchange would be Square.
Yep.
SQ is the symbol.
Yep.
So we just started buying it when they went into Bitcoin. It's tripled.
Anything we use. I learned that because you know what? I was so stupid and never bought Apple, even though I spent all my money on Apple products.
Yeah.
Like since 1993, 94, when I got my first Mac.
Yeah.
And it's like, why didn't I buy an Apple? Like, it's so stupid. I used to think it was really niche because not very many people had one back then. It was more a PC market. So I thought like, everybody in Hollywood had a Mac because that had the best graphics stuff back then. So anyway, I should have bought then. We also bought Amazon because when the lockdown happened, oh my God, like, I don't know, we went from say spending $500 a month to $5,000 a month on it. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, we were using it. That was the only source of so many goods that we were able to get. Like, none of our local supermarkets had anything. They were wiped out of everything.
So, yeah, who's really good at this describing this methodology is Peter Lynch.
Yes.
Peter Lynch back in the 1980s, one of the premier money managers. He ran Fidelity Magellan Fund for years. It was the top performing mutual fund for years. He wrote some great books. They're probably the greatest books written about Wall Street, investing on Wall Street, and he was always a big adherent to this idea that, don't overcomplicate it. Like, if you invest in stuff that and you use these products, because when the stock goes down, you're less likely to sell off. If you're investing in companies that are really kind of unknown to you, like some obscure pharmaceutical company working on a cure for something, if there's a downdraft in the market, you sell it quickly because you don't really have any confidence in it, and then you miss the upside, right? But if you kind of stick to areas that it gets you through the those sell-offs.
Well, everybody's also started podcasting and stuff, so it's been hard to get equipment. But as soon as this lockdown happened, and then when I realized, like, I think we're going to be trapped at home for a while, is I got some new iPhone 11s and a MacBook. And again, like, you see that in the numbers from Apple, like, everybody's working from home now.
Yeah.
And producing content. A lot of people are making content now. And the standard is really a MacBook for that, in terms of how easy it is.
Yeah.
To their user interface is very good. I know there are a lot of geeks out there and they like PCs and like building their own and Linux systems and stuff like that. But most ordinary people, who's working from home now in their 50s or something, they're like, that's too difficult. Just give me something easy that I just press.
Yeah, and at the same time, Spotify stock has been on a tear.
Yeah,
because podcasting, Spotify is the new Netflix.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be on Spotify soon, hopefully. I'm going to put
Shopify, big Canadian company. They let people build stores at home, and then they end up on Amazon. It's been on a tear. It's incredible.
This guy, Max Trotter, he's always messaging us and saying that our bookshelves will look great with books in color order.
Yeah. I try to put them in color order, then size order also. But I decided to just go with random.
I always think like a bookshelf with a color order is like, it's a sign of a psychopath. I always feel like it's American Psycho or something.
If you see somebody and their books are organized by color, you get out of the house quickly because that person's an axe murderer.
That's what I said.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah.
It's like, I never look at there and see like, oh, they should be in color order.
No, I would never say that. They are organized somewhat between American history, philosophy, cooking, gardening, and random novels.
I know, and we have all these books of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and
Yeah.
I thought like I was almost gonna like tape
Yeah.
those over and hide them, thinking like we would be deplatformed because
Yeah.
they're now we have to deny our
Alexander
history.
Hamilton, right here. This is a fine book, a biography in his own words. Look at that. Hamilton. Got a lot of photos in here. Good stuff. American history. Great, great, great. So over in this section, it's the American history of American poetry,
The Lives of the Poets.
lives of the poets. There we go. This is a nice book.
I see a British flag and the British bouquet right behind you.
All right.
On the origin of species.
Right.
And a life of Picasso.
Yeah.
So, you know, highbrow stuff. It's highbrow stuff.
Yeah,
this is not Times Square. But speaking of Times Square, I got to go out and hustle.
What the hell? What's going on?
Not that kind of hustle. There's several meanings of hustle.
Really? I only know of one.
No.
Shake your booty. Shake your booty.
Oh my God.
Shake, shake.
Oh my God.
Shake, shake, shake booty.
I don't have an opinion on Ledger Wallet. Do you?
It's good. It's okay. You know, Ledger's good. Trezor's good.
Trezor, I've only ever really used Trezor. I prefer that because you know.
We prefer Trezor.
Trezor because they were there at the first Bitcoin conference in Prague where Max spoke, and Elena Satoshi, she still has notes from Max's talk.
Yep.
And Slush was there.
Yep.
So they formed Trezor. So our allegiance is to them, but of course I use Casa Keys. Casa.
Casa, yeah.
Because multi-sig is the best.
Multi-sig is the best. Yep.
Are we like Diamond and Silk or something?
Yeah, we're like Diamond and Silk. That's right.
And
call and response.
Yes.
In the church of Satoshi.
I kind of feel hungry.
Yeah. Feel the hunger, sister. Feel it. I'm feeling the hunger.
Wasn't there an International House of Pancakes in Times Square?
House of Pancakes. You know what was there? It was Howard Johnson's.
Howard Johnson's.
I used to love that Howard Johnson's in Times Square. It was, I think, I'd been there for 50 years. It's just the architecture of it and everything about it was cool. And they just came down like 10 years ago.
It's just crazy to think there was a Howard Johnson's there now when you see it now. You also, Max used to go to those restaurants that no longer exist, but they had the food in the shelves already.
Yeah, the automat.
Yeah,
so the sandwiches are behind little glass doors. So it's near Grand Central, actually, the automat. So you put in a quarter, and then you open this glass door, and you grab your ham and cheese sandwich, and then you can see through the glass, and behind there is the kitchen, right? So then all these staff are there making all the sandwiches, and they're stuffing the little cubicles with food. And you have your tray, and you kind of slide down. You get the sandwich, and then you put a quarter here, and you get the piece of cake.
I don't know why they don't do that now. Like the pret-a-manger, it would be better for them to just do that instead of having all that packaging and stuff.
Well, during COVID, it's perfect, right?
Yeah.
Very social distancing. They should bring back the automat. If the automat were still around, it'd be packed. But they don't have it anymore.
Okay, well, it's time.
Well, but the thing about Times Square, though, is because right there was Tannen's magic shop. That was kind of why I spent so much time in Times Square, was because of Tannen's, is where you go to get for magic, to get your supplies for your act. I used to do my act in Times Square.
Max is a magic.
There's actually 3 magic stores within Times Square. But Tannen's, of course, was the place to go. That was the main place. I saw David Copperfield there. He used to hang out there on the weekends. The Amazing Kreskin. People who used to see the Amazing Kreskin on Johnny Carson, he would, he'd see him at Tannen's magic shop. My friend Joey Pipia was working at Tannen's, both demonstrating tricks out front and in the back, filling orders. It's an international magic servicing company. Joey Pipia, my friend, he studied with Slidini. The great Slidini was his teacher. And
Slidini
Joey
was the guy who made people pass out.
No, that was Maximiliano Londano. That's somebody that I studied with. Maximiliano Landano was a South American magician who he had a factory that made magic tricks for Tannins.
In Union Square, right?
No, it was not far from Times Square. It's kind of in Midtown, but like that was all warehouse space at that time. And a lot of factories still. I mean, I worked in a rubber stamp factory on 23rd Street. And all over Manhattan were factory floors with factory making stuff. And so
now it's just really expensive real estate.
High-end luxury flats. But so I was working for this guy, Maximiliano Landano, and he made magic tricks. So he made what are called mouth coils, which are, you tear up a piece of paper and you put it in your mouth, and then you pull out all this multicolored tissue paper, right? So we used to have to create these at the factory. He made a lot of plastic tricks and cheap tricks and making at the factory. So he had a brother, Maximiliano Landano, and the two of them every day would go out for lunch.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And they would come back from lunch, and then they would have this contest to see who picked the most pockets. So they each had picked 3 or 4 wallets. They were master pickpockets. They sold magic tricks. He had an insurance business. So he was selling insurance, car insurance, whole life, term insurance. And he also had a business curing people, would come with incurable diseases. And he would have vials of colored water, and he would cure them, psychic curing. That was another side business he had. Remember at that time, there were people doing psychic surgeries, where you would lay somebody out and you would put your hand apparently in their guts and pull out the malignant tumors and all this stuff. And this is, again, a magic trick. You can buy Tannins for $3.99. You can do that trick, the psychic surgery trick.
Now you just create an ICO, and it does the same thing.
The ICO. This is the
psychic
magic
surgery
trick, psychic surgery of the 21st century.
And somebody wants to know, but I'm going to jump in, how to use Casa Keys.Casa. It's a multi-sig wallet. So basically, they hold one of your keys for you, and you can have your key. So they are never able to spend your coins, but they are an emergency key for you if you need a signature. They're an emergency signature. If you happen to lose your other wallet, say your Trezor blows up and you miss that, you can't find that, or your own wallet on your phone. So you have your wallet on your phone, and that's encrypted and secured, obviously. And you have that one. You could have the second signature by Casa if you're, if you need it in an emergency, but you have your Trezor, 2 or 3 of them. And then for the higher service, the diamond and platinum versions, they have 3 of 5 signatures. The gold plan, which is only $10 a month, and you should really have that for anything between 1 and 10 Bitcoin. You do 2 of 5 signatures. So, you're it's a way to protect your coin without in a way that not only protects your coin from outside, forces trying to hack you or whatever, but it also protects you from yourself, losing your keys or losing, your Trezor, or losing your phone, or losing your seed. So it protects you from yourself. And so check it out. I kind of recommend the diamond plan, the middle one, that if you have over 10 Bitcoin, 10 to whatever, 100 Bitcoin, and they help you, they walk you through it. It's like having a Swiss concierge banking service.
Yeah. So multi-sig means you need more than one
to send. So if I want to send a Bitcoin to you, I could go here and send 1 Bitcoin, but it won't go until I get 2 other signatures. So, I'd get a Trezor, get the ledger, get Casa, have to sign it.
Right. So you have these multiple signatures are in locations that you control.
Yes.
And it's under your control, but you need multiple signatures so you're your coins are achieve a level of security that in this industry is unknown. This is the highest standard of security for your coins in this
You could
industry,
have one of the
and
signatures.
nobody comes close.
Yeah, you could spread them geographically. One in Los Angeles, one in Hong Kong, one in you can put them all over the world, so you don't have to rely on any one location.
They just said in their news this week that you can buy coins there now on the app.
Yes, in app.
That's right, in-app
purchases of Bitcoin. Yeah.
So I mean, we're investors in Casa and Swan, right? So you can do
and Square
and Infinite Fleet. We just made an investment in Infinite Fleet, that new token.
Yeah, but if you want to buy Bitcoin, buy it on one of our services, either Casa, Swan Bitcoin, or Square.
Yeah. So that's where.
But that's the thing. Like our early investments were, in exchanges.
Yeah.
Because especially after the failure of Mt. Gox, like this space needed exchanges. People wanted to trade, but also people wanted to buy. That was where the service where you went to buy Bitcoin in the early days was Mt. Gox or Kraken or Coinbase, if you must. So, that you went to an exchange, but now you have these other services like Casa, Cash App led the way on this, of being able to use an app to buy Bitcoin and be able to withdraw, because that's pretty amazing for such a mainstream sort of company, a listed company, to be able to withdraw your Bitcoin to your own wallet. Like you could buy Bitcoin as well on Robinhood app, for example, but you can't withdraw it to your own wallet.
Right.
So you can only sell it. So Cash App allows you to withdraw to your own wallet. And then other services like CoinFloor and swanbitcoin.com, swanbitcoin.com/max, you get $10 worth of Bitcoin if you sign up there. And so those services started to come up recently. So any way that makes it easy to buy, any service that allows you to buy Bitcoin, i.e. to start stacking, basically that's where Max and I have invested.
Yeah, exactly. Back in 2011, 2012, 2013, we invested in exchanges like Kraken.
Yes.
Like Shapeshift, like Bitso.
Yep.
In Mexico. So even though people say to me all the time, why are you shitting on all these altcoins? Well, the fact is that these exchanges are making big bank with these altcoins, but I'm still, so I'm going to end up making a ton of money anyway. But I'm just saying that I think you got to focus on Bitcoin. Unless you own equity in the exchanges, I'd rather own equity in the exchanges than own the coins themselves, right? Because that way there's no risk in the exchanges. As a former stockbroker, I'd rather be the house than being the customer at the casino. I'd rather be the casino, right? So I'm happy to own the equity in the exchanges, and I'm happy to take your money, but I'm recommending to you that this is not a sound policy to speculate on these altcoins. You need to build a foundation on Bitcoin. If you want to go away from Bitcoin to something more speculative, buy silver. I mean, Peter Schiff is not completely wrong about this, that silver is and Bitcoin, you got to think of those two in similar terms. Only if you're basically, you wake up with a severe hangover from having drank your weight in vodka and you're in the gutter and you're down to your last 5 cents, would you buy something like an altcoin?
Well, that sounds like Times Square in the 1970s.
Right. So it makes sense then. If you're like bleeding out of every orifice of your body and you have your only $1 left and you're going to roll the dice and buy Potcoin, figuring that Dennis Rodman is going to cure the North Korean conundrum. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Only then would I suggest that to make this move.
Okay. Well, if rather than altcoin, I'd rather you invest in silver, because silver is a volatile, extreme movement. Silver trained me up to be a Bitcoiner in the early days of Bitcoin when it was way more volatile. Well, silver is also extremely volatile. It's only a $44 billion market. Bitcoin is a $200 billion market.
Yeah.
So, if it's a small market, it's easier to move them around. And people get addicted to that. I can see why people go into altcoins. They hang out on 4chan all day and they're just there for the lulls, and they're there to, they think it's funny if they lose $1,000 on some coin that they don't know what it is. And I've lost money in Vegas in a slot machine where you put money in the slot machine and it just disappears and you're like, oh, okay.
Well, I mean, that's my criticism of some place like Coinbase, for example, because they don't really advertise the fact that it's an unregulated casino for shit coins.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically their business model. And I've got nothing against casinos, but they should advertise themselves as a casino, and they shouldn't pretend like it's anything but a casino.
They should also have some pole dancers.
They need pole dancers, like Brian Armstrong, that bald head in a G-string. Okay, do some pole dancing while I'm buying my shit coins on Coinbase. Okay, give me some value for my money. I just don't want you to take my money. If you're gonna, there's something I could say here, but it would be inappropriate.
Okay. Next week we're going to be here with Orange Pill Podcast. We have some surprise guests and music.
Earthquake.
Max is going to be wearing an orange G-string and some orange eyeshadow.
Oh yeah, baby.
I know.
Yeah. Oh hell yeah.
We'll see you next.
I'm going to show you my pierced nipples.
Go too far.
Do I?